Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Fuller here, and in today's video we are going to jump into the Quartz timing system in the Unreal Engine 5.1, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what we're going to be working on today. So we got our basic first-person shooter. When we pick up this gun, it's going to start the percussion, Quantized. Then over here, when we walk in this trigger box, it's going to trigger the flute track, Quantized. When we come over here, it's going to trigger that flute track off with the slow fade out. And then when we go in this box, it's going to completely shut all the music off. And then we're back. And okay, so now the Quartz system in Unreal is a little complicated, and it's a little it takes a little bit of finagling to set it up, but once you get it set up, it's a really powerful tool, because what it allows you to do is it allows you to play audio at sample accurate moments in time, meaning you can trigger all sorts of things to happen exactly when you want it to happen. And Dan Reynolds has a killer video out there on what Quartz is and exactly how it works. I'm going to put a link to the video down in my comment section so you can go check that out. But he really does a cool walkthrough and explains exactly that Quartz is actually a scheduling system, is basically what it is. And what it allows us to do is, instead of just playing random, music and hoping that it's synced up, what Quartz does is it ensures that when you start this track, it's going to be sample accurate, and it really gives you a lot of cool opportunities to do some really procedural music in ways that you couldn't do before. So let's jump on into the session and let's get started. So in today's video, we are going to create a Quartz clock system. We are going to use that clock to cue and play sounds at a specific quantized boundary, and we're going to use trigger boxes to turn those on and turn those off with quantization. So we're talking about musical rhythmic quantization. So let's start. I'm going to show you real quick the blueprint for this, just so we, for those of you who want to try to just jump on in, here's how you create the Quartz clock here. Then down here I have some trigger boxes triggering a percussion track and a flute track, and then I have a trigger box stopping it. So we're going to build all of this from scratch. So let me just do away with all of this. Okay. Clear out this blueprint. Okay, so we're here in the level. What I did, all you have to do is basically go create a new game from the first-person shooter perspective. And when you load it, you're just going to see this gun floating in the air. And what I did is I put another trigger box right where this gun is that we are going to use, if I can select it here, that we're going to use to trigger the actual original audio. And we're actually going to use this trigger to start the clock, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then we're going to use these three trigger boxes to do other things. So you don't have to, you can use just the basic whatever world you want to use, but what you want to do is you want to go into your game, you want to add 3 trigger boxes and 1 trigger sphere right here, and that's really easy to do. And the way to do that is you can just come over here under place actors and type in trigger, and then you can drag the trigger boxes in, and you can drag the trigger sphere in, put it wherever you want it, move it around. You can resize it with scale, whatever you want to do. So just drag 3 of those in, and you can see here I got 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll be off to the races. So once you do that, we're going to go to our blue. Oh, and let me show you the sounds we're using. We're using this percussion layer here, which is just a percussion track, kind of like a cinematic percussion track. Now, coincidentally, this is at 93 beats per minute, and that's important. Also, this flute track is also at 93, and I'll just play a little bit of this stem. So this is just kind of like a flute riffing on some cool, like, kind of vibey Middle Eastern vibe with a ton of reverb. Those are at the same tempo, and that's important when using the Quartz system. Just understand that you need to make sure all your audio is at the same tempo. Otherwise it can get a little messy. For the flute, we're actually creating a meta sound, so we're not just using that audio, but we're creating a meta sound with the flute asset in it, because I want this I want the gain for the flute separate, because what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to turn up and down the flute track when I walk in the trigger box, and kill all the music when we walk in the stop music. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to go to open level blueprint, and that's going to bring us in here. Right now there's really nothing in here. As you can see, empty blueprint. So first thing we're going to do is step 1, create the Quartz clock. Now you have to pull in the Quartz subsystem and create the clock, and then that clock becomes the master for all of your events, and that will be used to sync all of your quantized events. So let's jump in here. So first thing we want to do is we want to right click, and we want to get the Quartz subsystem. So we're going to get Quartz subsystem, and that's going to bring us right here. So what this is doing is this is actually implementing that we want to use the Quartz subsystem. From the subsystem we can create all sorts of clocks, but today we're just going to create one clock. So what we want to do here is we want to drag off here, and we want to type create clock. We're going to create a new clock. So there's our new clock, and we want to do this on event begin play. So as soon as the game starts, we're going to access the Quartz subsystem, and we're going to create this clock. Now, we want to name this clock. I'm going to name this clock main clock 93. And I'm just putting 93 there because I do want to be able to quickly reference the fact that this clock is at 93 BPM. Now, you can change the Quartz clock in the middle of a game. You can change the tempo, but for this we're going to keep it at 93. So I just like having the tempo in there, so I know which clock is which. So we're going to create main clock 93, and then in settings, and this is where we're going to pull off here, and we are going to make Quartz clock setting. Now if you have context sensitivity on, this is about the only thing you'll be able to pull in. We're going to make Quartz clock setting. Then over here, you can see we're going to pull off time signature, and we're going to make Quartz time signature. For this, we're going to leave this at 4/4. You can put that at whatever you want, but for these tracks, they're all 4/4, and they're at 93 beats per minute. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here, we're going to pull off this return value, and we're going to set BPM, set beats per minute, and that's going to automatically connect these two execution nodes. Now we want to type here what our tempo is going to be. This can be anything, but again, my audio files are at 93, so it makes sense to trigger them at 93. That way we can bring those audio in on beats, 16th notes, 32nd notes, whatever you want to do. So now that we've got the BPM set up, the other thing I want to do is I do want to come over here and I want to promote this to a variable. Come over here, I'm going to call this main clock 93. So now this is going to, and you see that this defaulted to, oh wait, I won't let me do that, delete. There we go. So you can see over here, this defaulted to the type of Quartz clock type. So this is a variable. So now this variable is going to be storing this Quartz clock. Now, that's all we need to do for now, but keep in mind, we've created the clock, but eventually we're going to have to start the clock, because once we start the clock, that's when the timer starts. So now, let's just comment this section out here. This is going to be create Quartz clock. All right. Now that we have the clock created, we are going to use the trigger box to spawn and play a sound that's quantized. So we're going to go back to our first person map. I want to get this trigger sphere right here. It's right outside the gun, which is going to trigger pretty much right when we grab the gun as well. And we are going to go back to our first person map. We're going to right click, create reference to trigger sphere. Actually, no, we're going to go add event collision on actor begin overlap. So now when our character walks over that sphere, it's going to do whatever we tell it. So right now we're going to go out here. We're going to bring this. We're going to add a do once node. And the reason we want to do once is because we don't want it to trigger the sound every single time we walk through that sphere. We pick up the gun once, we want to trigger that sound once. Now, once we stop the music, we'll open that trigger back up so we can re-trigger it. But this way, while the music is playing, it won't trigger it twice. Now we want to come over here. We want to create 2D sound. And for here, we're going to select our percussion, which is right here. We're going to hit boom. So that's going to cue up the sound. It's not playing it yet, it's just creating it. Now we're going to come over here, and off this we're going to drag play quantized. And as you can see, this is an option now. And we're going to play quantized. We're going to put this at the target. Then under play quantized, this is where we need the clock handle. Okay, so here's the clock that we made. We're going to bring this in. We're going to get the clock. We're going to put this in, so now it's obeying the time of this clock. And then in quantized boundary, we're going to drag this off. We're going to go make quantization boundary. I want this to start on the bar when the transport resets. So this is going to be relative to the transport. It's going to start at the beginning of the next bar. So if we cue this, if we run into that trigger box in the middle of bar 1 and 2, it's going to start this audio right on beat 2. Which, essentially doesn't matter the first time, but when we start layering the other tracks in, it will matter. Otherwise, they'll be all wacky and out of sync. Now, the other thing we want to do is we want to expand this play quantized node. We want to pull out in delegate. And what we're going to do here is we are going to add a custom event. And we'll just call this quantize. Let's just call this quantize. And then under event type, we're going to bring out this switch, and this is really cool here. This is going to allow us to tell this that let's wait till this is queued. Once this is queued, then we want to do something else. So what do we want to do? Once it's queued, we want to start the Quartz clock. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to go grab our clock again, bring that here. We're going to get clock. Then we're going to start clock. Boom. And we want to do this when this is queued. So now, once this happens and this sound is queued up, we're going to start the clock and it's going to play quantized. This will not play until we start the clock. Anytime you tie an event to a quantization boundary, it won't play unless the clock is actually rolling. It's almost like a transport on a DAW. You could have your files lined up in your DAW, but until you hit play, you're not going to hear anything. So now that's that. Let's go back and test this. So let's compile, save. Let's go back to first person, hit play, see what we got. Bam. Perfect. Yeah. So that's great. It works perfectly. So let's just do it one more time. Walk in here. As soon as we pick up the gun, you'll hear the percussion start. And that's starting right on beat 1 of the clock. Now, that's the first section. Now let's make a trigger box over here. Let's select this. We're going to go to our blueprint. Okay? And you know what? Let's comment this out. That is start percussion. Now we're going to come down here, add an event, a collision event for this trigger box. And this is the trigger box that's going to turn our flutes on. And so what we're going to do here, same thing kind of we did up here. We're going to go create, do once, create 2D sound. We're going to play the sound quantized on the main clock, and we're going to make a quantization boundary. Now we don't need the other stuff because the clock has already been started. So let's just go here, 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 and here. Let's copy this. Control C, come over here, Control V. We're going to start this, do once. Now here we're going to select Metasound Flute. That's going to start our Metasound. As soon as we overlap this trigger box, we're going to cue up the sound and play it quantized to the next bar. So That's all we need to do. Let's watch it work. Oh, you know what? One thing else I want to do, I want to do a print string here, and I want to just print flutes are triggered. Bro, I'm so triggered. Okay, so here we go. Let's go here. Now, now here's the thing. If we go to here first, it says flutes are triggered, but they are triggered, but they're not playing. Why? Because we haven't started the clock. So we go here, we pick up our gun, bam, clock has started. Now the flutes are starting. Why? Because I already had the sound queued up when I went over the trigger box. And since I started the clock, it started exactly the same time as the percussion. But let's do it the opposite way. Let's go pick up our gun, bam. You hear the percussion, no flutes yet. So when I walk into this flutes on, it's gonna start it. It's gonna give us the trigger message, but you're not gonna hear the flutes come in until the next bar. Right here, watch this. That's the bar right there. And you see the flutes started perfectly on top of that bar and is now in perfect sync. Now, don't be confused because the flute, if you recall, the flute audio doesn't come in on the downbeat. 1, 2, 3. So it comes in on the 1, bum, bum. It comes in on the 2, bum, 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 bum. So you hear it coming on the 2, but it's actually playing on the 1. One more time, pick up the gun. Then we go trigger the flutes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Trigger. Bum, bum. There it is. Perfect. Now let's turn them off. How are we going to turn them off? What I want to do now is I want to. So when we come in this trigger box, we start the float. We start the flute track. But now what I want to do is I want to do a end overlap. But this time what I want to do is I want to send a float parameter to the meta sound. So, you know what else I want to do? Check this out. So I want to, on this return value here, I want to set a variable. I want to promote this to a variable, and I want to call this variable here. Let's just insert this right here. So when we, oh gosh, C++ killing me. All right, hold on. I do that a lot. All right. All right, so I want to come in here. I want to drop this in here because what I want to do is when we cue the sound, I want to set this variable. We want to call this flute, and this is an audio component variable. So now what's playing is going to be stored in flute. So now what we're going to do is we have access to this meta sound here. So what we're going to do over here on the end overlap, we're going to bring in flute, and then we're going to get flute, and we're going to set float parameter, which you should remember from our Metasound 101 tutorial. Now we can go in here, and what's the name of the parameter? Remember, we call this flute gain. So this is going to say flute gain. So now when we walk over this box, that parameter is going to change to 0. So if the volume's at 1, which is full, it's going to go to 0, which is none. So what we'll have when we walk in, and when I walk out, it'll go to 0. But that's useless. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get rid of that, and we're going to put it on this box. That's what I meant to do over here. I want to put it on this box, which says flutes off. So I want to select this one, go in here. I want to right click, collision, actor begin overlap, and I want to drag this out. So now when we go over to this box, it's going to turn on, and this box, it's going to turn off. Here we go. Percussion's triggered, clock is rolling. 1, 2, 3, 4, triggered, bum, bum. We got the flutes on. Now we're gonna go in here and the flute track will go off. Now that's a little abrupt. So what I would do here is I would set a trigger float timeline. And so the way we do that, again, we're just gonna lerp that. We're gonna go a timeline. We're gonna add a timeline. This is gonna be real quick. We're just gonna call that lerp. We are gonna set this, we're gonna add a float track, and I did this in one of my other videos. We're gonna create, this will be 1 second in length, and then we're gonna add a node here. I'm going real fast here because I did this in another video. I can't remember which one. I think it was my steampunk monosynth one. Go 1. So right now, this is going to take us from 0 to 1, so that timeline's good. Then we'll go back over here. Now what we want to do is we want to trigger this line lerp, and we are going to update the float parameter. But the way we're going to do that is we're going to interp that to... Oop, no, that's not what I want to. We want to interp. We want to lerp. We want to lerp that. We want to lerp that from 0. We want to lerp that from 1 to 0. And we want to do it over the course of the timeline. So now we are going to, when you overlap the second trigger box, it's going to slowly, well, within 1 second, it's going to go from 1 to 0. So it's going to turn it down a little more gradual. That's going to be a lot smoother for us. So let's check that out. Trigger percussion. Flutes are triggered. Now you'll hear it slowly fade out. That's what we want. Super smooth, super chill. Now, we did do onces, so we didn't re-trigger stuff. So what we want to do now, our final step, and let's just, this is all part of the flutes. So let's just make this all part of the flutes. We're going to comment this out. Just call this flutes. The final step in this tutorial is we want to make it so that when we walk in this box, it just turns everything off. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to select the trigger, go back to the blueprint. Up here, I'm going to right click on begin play. Now what I want to do is I want to, oh, did I put a variable up here? You know what? Let me add a variable here as well. So we want to go here, and I do want to, I did this in the last one. Let me delete this. That's left over from my last time. I want to go over here. I want to set variable, promote to variable. I want to call this one percussion. So now we have access to that wherever we want it, and we don't get a super sloppy graph. And then we'll come out here. So now we have the percussion variable, just like we have the flute variable. So up here, what I want to do is I want to bring this in, the flute, get flute. I want to bring in percussion. I want to get percussion. Now, we're going to drag off this, and we're going to type in stop. Now, we could do this smoother with the volume, but right now I just want to kill the sound. So now we're going to go target there. So when we listen to this, no matter what's playing, when we walk, we could have that. We could have flutes playing. When we walk into this box, it's going to shut everything off. Bam. And that's what we want. Now, the other thing we want to do is after it shuts everything off, we want to come down here. We want to do a sequence node. And then we want to bring this here. And I want to, on this, I want to reset, basically open this do once. And then where's the other one? Oh, the other one's up here. So let's bring this up here. And then I want to open this do once. So now what this is doing, this is resetting those other trigger boxes so that when I go back to them, they'll start the music again. So music, flutes on, music off. But now our clock is rolling, so we can turn the flutes back on with the percussion track. And again, that cycle will repeat over and over. So that's the introduction to the Quartz system. I'm going to do more videos about specifically around the Quartz system. We're going to get more and more complex in each video, and eventually we're going to build a completely interactive music system with all sorts of cool things that you can do for interactive music. Quartz opens up a lot of possibilities in Unreal 5, and it's a really powerful thing. So it's really worth taking some time and learning how to do it, learn how to set up the clock and grab the clock and all that, so that all of the actors and stuff in the world can interact with the music and trigger quantized events. So hope this video was helpful. Thanks so much for checking out the channel. Please like and subscribe if you get a chance, and we'll see you in the next video.